Welcome to Africa Now, your trusted voice for current affairs and breaking developments across the African continent. Today, we bring you a critical story that strikes at the heart of democratic freedoms and the rule of law in East Africa. As always, we begin with a reminder. This report is based on publicly available information, and our aim is to inform, not to incite or sensationalize. We encourage open dialogue and peaceful engagement. In a dramatic turn of events, Tanzanian opposition leader and former presidential candidate Tundu Lissu is at the center of an escalating international legal and diplomatic storm. Lawyers representing Lissu have taken the unprecedented step of filing a formal complaint with the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, seeking to have his imprisonment declared unlawful under international human rights law. This move, announced on May 30, 2025, underscores growing concern that Lissu's detention is not only politically motivated, but emblematic of a broader regression in civil liberties in Tanzania. Tundu Lissu, the charismatic chairman of the CHADEMA party and a formidable figure in Tanzanian politics, was arrested in April on charges of treason, a grave accusation that carries the death penalty under Tanzanian law. Authorities allege that Lissu incited supporters to obstruct the upcoming October national elections, remarks which government prosecutors interpret as a direct attack on the constitutional order. His arrest sparked immediate backlash both domestically and abroad, igniting fears of a renewed crackdown on opposition voices in a nation that had shown tentative steps toward political openness in recent years. The government of President Samia Suluhu Hassan, who assumed office following the sudden death of former President John Magufuli in 2021, has portrayed itself as a reformist administration. President Hassan has taken visible steps to soften the country's international image, reversing some of Magufuli's repressive policies and reopening space for civil discourse. However, the detention of Lissu and a wave of alleged abductions of critics in recent months now cast a shadow over that narrative. As President Hassan seeks re-election this October, critics question whether her pledges to uphold democratic values are genuine or merely cosmetic. In recent statements, she has insisted that Tanzania respects human rights and ordered investigations into the reported kidnappings. But these assurances have done little to quell skepticism. The case of Tundu Lissu now threatens to become a litmus test for her administration's credibility on the global stage. At the forefront of Lissu's international defense is Robert Amsterdam, a well-known human rights attorney with a history of representing high-profile political dissidents. Amsterdam confirmed that a confidential petition has been submitted to the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, asserting that Lissu's arrest is a clear-cut violation of international norms. The UN body, while lacking enforcement authority, carries significant weight through its opinions and can galvanize international diplomatic pressure. Amsterdam has also signaled intentions to petition the U.S. State Department to impose targeted sanctions against Tanzanian officials involved in what he called a false show trial. In a fiery statement to Reuters, Amsterdam warned that individuals complicit in Lissu's prosecution, from judges to police officers, could be exposing themselves to legal and financial consequences abroad. They had better be aware that they should protect their U.S. assets, he said, underscoring the seriousness with which Lissu's legal team is pursuing the matter. The international community is beginning to respond. Earlier in May, the European Parliament adopted a resolution condemning Lissu's arrest as politically driven and urging Tanzanian authorities to drop the charges. The resolution described the case as part of a broader pattern of repression targeting opposition figures, civil society activists, and journalists in the lead up to the general elections. In turn, Tanzania's foreign ministry dismissed the resolution as being based on incomplete or partisan information, accusing critics of interfering in the country's sovereign affairs. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department has remained silent, declining to comment on the case despite mounting calls for action. Observers say the lack of a clear U.S. position may reflect a broader recalibration of Washington's policy in the region, as it balances support for democratic governance with strategic interests in East Africa. Tundu Lissu's own history lends a tragic depth to the current saga. In 2017, he survived a brutal assassination attempt, being shot 16 times in an attack that remains unresolved to this day. No suspects were ever charged, and Lissu spent years in exile before returning to Tanzania to participate in the 2020 election, where he emerged as the runner-up to Magufuli. His unwavering defiance in the face of danger has earned him both admiration and enmity, making him a symbol of resistance for many Tanzanians who yearn for political change. Adding to the gravity of the situation, two foreign human rights activists, Kenyan Boniface Mwangi and an unnamed Ugandan, who had traveled to Tanzania to attend Lissu's court hearing last week, were reportedly detained by authorities. Both were later found near their respective home country borders after several days incommunicado. Mwangi reported that he and his Ugandan counterpart were severely tortured while in custody. These accusations have not yet received a formal response from Tanzanian authorities, though they have further inflamed tensions and drawn rebuke from regional civil society groups. President Hassan, in a pointed remark during a recent public address, warned international actors to refrain from invading and interfering in our affairs. While the statement was framed as a defense of national sovereignty, it also served as a thinly veiled message to the international community to tread carefully. Before we continue, we'd like to thank our viewers and subscribers for supporting Africa Now. If you find our coverage informative and valuable, please consider subscribing and sharing our reports. Your support helps amplify the voices and issues that matter across the continent. Lissu is expected to appear in court again on Monday, a session that may determine the next phase of his legal ordeal. Legal experts say the outcome could set the tone for how far the Tanzanian judiciary is willing or able to resist political pressure. For now, all eyes remain on Dar es Salaam, where a complex clash of law, politics, and international diplomacy continues to unfold. What remains at stake is not just the fate of one politician, but the trajectory of democracy in Tanzania. As the country approaches a pivotal election, the world watches to see whether its leaders will uphold the principles of justice and freedom, or succumb to the well-worn tactics of authoritarian rule. Stay with Africa Now for continued coverage of this unfolding story. We'll keep you informed, engaged, and empowered with the latest developments.